Day 8th of July 2025, and we're continuing with chapter 7 of Adi-lila Caitanya Caritamrta. So we'll begin. Agyan Timirandasya Gyananjala Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tara Bhaktaya Namo Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Shtapitam Jina Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Priya Swarupe, Daita Swarupe, Prema Swarupe, Sahajabi Rupe, Nijana Rupe, Prabhueka Rupe, Tatana Rupe, Swavala Swarupe. Anapita Chirim Chirat Kuruna Bhartino Kalo Samadapaitam Unnata Ujvala Rasam Swabhakti Shriyam Hari Purata Sundarata Tikatam Vasatapita Sadahridare Kandare Swaratu Vasachinandanaha Yam Pravajantamanapetiam Apeti Krityam Dvaipaino Viraha Katara Ajuhava Putre Titam Matayo Taravo Vinidustam Sarvabhutam Hridim Munimanatoshmi Bhaktya Vihina Aparata Lakshay Shiptascha Karmari Tarangamadye Kripa Maitvam Sharanam Prapana Brinde Namaste Charanarvindam Bhajami Radham Aravinda Netram Smarami Radham Madhurashmitasyam Vadami Radham Karuna Varadram Tato Mamanasti Katyana Kapi Tavaivasmi Najivami Tvaivina Iti Vignaya Radhe Tvam Naivam Charantikam. I'm first of all offering millions and millions of Dandavat pranams unto the lotus feet of my most beloved Gurudev Nitya-lila Pravishta Om Asto Tarasara Shishimat Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And I'm offering the same again millions and millions of times unto the lotus feet of our beloved Nitya-lila Pravishta Om Asto Tarasara Shishimat Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And again I'm offering millions of Dandavat pranams unto the lotus feet of our dearmost Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami and all our divine Rupanuga Guru Varga and all the Vaishnava and Vaishnavi devotees of the Lord. My Dandavat pranams to everyone. Vanchakalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubevacha patitanam papnebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So we're continuing this 7th chapter, which is describing the Lord in 5 features, all of the potent personalities that assist the Lord in his mission of tasting the sweetness of Sri Radhika's love for him and to spread his mission, Rag Mag Bhakti Loke Karite Prajan, to inundate the whole world with this Raganuga Bhakti, which has never been given before. So we've been reading many aspects about the impersonal or Mayavad view, and many purports have been describing this, and we've described many different types of Mayavadis, because actually Mahaprabhu is going to confront these Mayavadis in Varanasi. So there's a very beautiful verse in Bhagavad Gita in chapter 8, text 9. And I wanted to read this commentary. It's not very long, purport. But Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, he very clearly defines this impersonal and voidistic path. So it seems like Facebook has stopped working. So we're on mobile data today. Let's see how we're going to go. So this is text 9 of chapter 8 of Bhagavad Gita. Kavim Puranam Anushishtattaram Anur Aniyam Sam Anusmaradya Sarvasya Tataram Achintya Rupam Aditya Varanam Tamasaha Parastat. This is saying, one should meditate upon the Supreme Person as the one who knows everything, as he who is the oldest, who is the controller, who is smaller than the smallest, who is the maintainer of everything. See, this is describing the characteristics, the nature. Who is beyond all material conception, who is inconceivable
and who is always a person. He is luminous like the sun, and being transcendental is beyond this material nature. So if you're on Facebook and it's having some difficulty streaming today, you can jump across to YouTube, which seems to be holding out at the moment. So I want to read this purport because it's very illuminating. The process of thinking of the Supreme is mentioned in this verse. You see, the devotees have to really catch this. How do we meditate on the Supreme? This is saying, the foremost point is that he is not impersonal or void, like all these different Mayavadis we've been describing. One cannot meditate on something impersonal or void. That is very difficult. The process of thinking of Krishna, however, is very easy and is factually stated herein. First of all, he is Purush, spiritual, Ram and Krishna, and is described herein as Kavim. That is, he knows past, present, and future, and therefore knows everything. So now we're getting an insight into the Supreme Lord. He is the oldest personality because he is the origin of everything. Everything is born out of him. He is also the supreme controller of the universe, maintainer and instructor of humanity. He is smaller than the smallest because he resides within the Supersoul. The living entity is 1/10,000th part the tip of a hair in size, but the Lord is so inconceivably small that he enters into the heart as of this particle. Therefore he is called smaller than the smallest. As the Supreme, he can enter into the atom and into the heart of the smallest and control him as the Supersoul. Although so small, he is still all-pervading and is maintaining everything. By him, all these planetary systems are sustained. We often wonder how these big planets are floating in the air. It is stated here that the Supreme Lord, by his inconceivable energy, is sustaining all these big planets and systems of galaxies. The word achintya, inconceivable, is very significant in this connection. God's energy is beyond our conception, beyond our thinking jurisdiction, and is therefore called inconceivable, achintya. Who can argue this point? He pervades this material world and yet is beyond it. We cannot even comprehend this material world, which is insignificant compared to the spiritual world. So how can we comprehend what is beyond? Achintya means that which is beyond this material world. Achintya. Achintya means that which is conceivable to the senses. Achintya is beyond the material senses. Achintya means that which is beyond the material world, that which our argument, logic, and philosophical speculation cannot touch, that which is inconceivable. Therefore, intelligent persons, avoiding useless argument and speculation, should accept what is stated in scriptures like the Vedas, Gita, and Srimad Bhagavatam, and follow the principles they set down. This will lead one to understanding. So that's from 8:9 in Bhagavad Gita. And now we're going to go into a very beautiful description of how Mahaprabhu purifies the Varanasi, Mayavad, Sankarite sannyasis. So we're up to text 49, chapter 7.
Jaya Jaya Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Iti Madhya Chandra Shekhar Mishra Tapana Duke Hana Prabhu Paya Kaila Nivadana.
While Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was instructing Sanatana Goswami, both Chandrasekhar and Tapana Mishra became very unhappy. Therefore they submitted an appeal unto the lotus feet of the Lord. Text 50.
Kateka Soniba Prabhu Tomara Nindana Na Parisahite Ebe Chadibat Jivana.
Translation: how can we tolerate the blasphemy by your critics against your conduct. We should give up our lives rather than hear such blasphemy. So these Mayavadis had been blaspheming heavily the Lord, and Chandrasekhar and Tapana Misra had to tolerate that. Purport. One of the most important instructions by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu regarding regular Vaishnava behavior is that a Vaishnava should be tolerant like a tree and submissive like grass. Tinadapi sunichena taror iva samichena amanina manadena kirtanya sadahari. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and ready to offer all respects to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Nevertheless, the author of these instructions, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, did not tolerate the misbehavior of Jagai and Madai. When they harmed Lord Nityananda Prabhu, he immediately became angry and wanted to kill them. And it was only by the mercy of Lord Nityananda Prabhu that they were saved. One should be very meek and humble in his personal transactions, and if insulted, a Vaishnava should be tolerant and not angry. But if there is blasphemy against one's guru or another Vaishnava, one should become as angry as fire. This was exhibited by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. One should not tolerate blasphemy against a Vaishnava, but should immediately take one of three actions. If someone blasphemes a Vaishnava, one should stop him with arguments and higher reason. If one is not expert enough to do this, he should give up his life on the spot. And if he cannot do this, he must go away. While Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in Benares or Kashi, the Mayavadi sannyasis blasphemed him in many ways, because although he was a sannyasi, he was indulging in chanting and dancing. Tapana Mishra and Chandrasekhar heard this criticism, but it was intolerable for them because they were great devotees of Lord Chaitanya. They could not stop it, however, and therefore they appealed to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because this blasphemy was so intolerable that they had decided to give up their lives. Text 51.
Tomara nindaya yata sanyasira gana sunitena paripate hridaya sarva shravana.
Translation. The Mayavadi sannyasis are all criticizing your holiness. We cannot tolerate hearing such criticism, for this blasphemy breaks our hearts. Purport. This is a manifestation of real love for Krishna and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There are three categories of Vaishnavas: Kanishta Adhikaris, Madhyam Adhikaris, and Uttam Adhikaris. The Kanishta Adhikari, or the devotee in the lowest stage of Vaishnava life, has firm faith, but is not familiar with the conclusions of Shastra. The devotee in the second stage, the Madhyam Adhikari, is completely aware of the Shastric conclusion and has firm faith in his Guru and the Lord. He, therefore, avoiding non-devotees, preaches to the innocent. So, of course, this is from a very beautiful verse that Prabhupada is quoting. Ishvare tad adineshu balesheshu divashtu cha prema maitri kripa peksha ya karoti samadhyama. And this translates, the Madhyam Bhakta, Bhagavat, is one who has love for Ishvara and his pure devotees, friendship towards his bhaktas, shows mercy towards those who are innocent in regard to bhakti, and neglects those who are inimical to Ishvara or his bhaktas. So this is on page 76 of our Slokamrita book, if you want to appreciate that verse more deeply. But this is where Prabhupada is quoting from. However, the Mahabhagavat, or Uttam Adhikari, the devotee in the highest stage of devotional life, does not see anyone as being against the Vaishnava principles, for he regards everyone as a Vaishnava but himself. Devotees should always think like this. We never think, oh, I am a Vaishnava. We always think the others are Vaishnavas. This is just the natural humility of the devotee. If we're having the abhiman, the conception, yes, I am a Vaishnava or a great Vaishnava, then how is that going to be increasing our mood of humility? It won't. This is the essence of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's instruction, that one be more tolerant than a tree and think oneself lower than the straw in the street. We see the example of Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj himself. He's saying, I am lower than a worm in stool. Anyone who takes my name even is destined for a lower birth. So this is not, he's not just saying this. This is how he genuinely feels. Why does someone feel like that? Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj once explained, why do the devotees who are on such an elevated platform consider themselves so low? And he explained very beautifully. He said, if you go to the shore of the material ocean, then the person is dwarfed by the potency and power of the ocean. You start to naturally feel insignificant compared to the ocean. What to speak of that person who approaches the transcendental ocean? How insignificant does he feel? If one approaches that transcendental ocean, he feels completely insignificant. So this mood of insignificance is very essential for the practicing devotee, always this mood of. But then again, Prabhupada here is giving the example that if someone blasphemes or challenges a devotee, then we should become like fire. There's many examples of this, but the example of Jagai and Madai is what Prabhupada gives here. However, even if a devotee is on the Uttam Bhagavat status, he must come down to the second status of life, the Madhyam Adhikari, to be a preacher. For a preacher should not tolerate blasphemy against another Vaishnava. Although a Kanishta Adhikari also cannot tolerate such blasphemy, he is not competent to stop it by citing Shastric evidences. Therefore, Tapana Mishra and Chandrasekhar are understood to be Kanishta Adhikaris, because they could not refute the arguments of the sannyasis in Benares. Chandrasekhar is the moon god. This is who he is. He's manifesting. Many demigods manifest with Mahaprabhu as his parikars, and Chandrasekhar is the moon god. I couldn't find out who is Tapana Mishra. If anybody knows, they can send a message. But I couldn't find in Gaura Ganadesh Deepika and other books. But Tapana Mishra is a special soul also. But they couldn't refute the arguments of the sannyasis and Benares. They appealed to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to take action, for they felt that they could not tolerate such criticism, although they also could not stop it. So they were in a dilemma. They were feeling really restricted. Text 52.
Iha sune rahe prabhu isat hasiya, se kale eka vipra milalya asya.
Translation: while Tapana Mishra and Chandrasekhar were thus talking with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he only smiled slightly and remained silent. At that time, a Brahmana came there to meet the Lord. Because the blasphemy was cast against Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, he did not feel sorry, and therefore he was smiling. This is ideal Vaishnava behavior. One should not become angry upon hearing criticism of himself, but if other Vaishnavas are criticized, one must be prepared to act as previously suggested. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very compassionate for his pure devotees, Tapana Mishra and Chandrasekhar. Now he's calling them pure devotees, Tapana Mishra and Chandrasekhar. But still they didn't have the arguments, you see, to refute these Varanasi Mayavads, because these sannyasi Mayavads were very expert in Sanskrit and in grammatical word jugglery, etc. This is what the Mayavadi school teach. You have to be very expert in all the intricacies of the Sanskrit language to even be a Mayavad sannyasi. So that's what they demand. So it's a high standard of intellect that is required, and Tapana Mishra and Chandrasekhar weren't operating on that platform. So Prabhupada previously called them Kanishta. Therefore, by his grace, this Brahmana immediately came to him. Yes, it was divine arrangement that this Brahmana came. By his omnipotence, the Lord created this situation for the happiness of his devotees. Whatever the Lord desires is going to manifest. His Yogamaya potency is always working for the support of the Lord's pastimes. This Facebook is just going in and out the whole time. Must be very disturbing if someone's trying to watch that. Text 53. Ashine Vedana Kari Charana Dariya Ekavastu Magana Deha Pasana Haya. Translation. The Brahmana immediately fell at the lotus feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and requested him to accept his proposal in a joyful mood. Report. The Vedic injunctions state, Tadvidi pranipatena pranipashena sevaya. One must approach a superior authority in humbleness. Bhagavad Gita 4.34. One cannot challenge a superior authority, but with great submission, one can submit his proposal for acceptance by the spiritual master or the spiritual authorities. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is an ideal teacher by his personal behavior, and so also are all his disciples. Thus, this Brahmana, being purified in association with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, followed these principles in submitting his request to the higher authority. He fell down at the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and then spoke as follows. Text 54. Sakala Sanyasi Muni Koina Namantrana Tumi Yadi Aishe Purna Hoye Muramana. My dear Lord, I have invited all the sannyasis of Benares to my home. My desire will be fulfilled if you also accept my invitation. Purport. This Brahmana knew that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was the only Vaishnava sannyasi in Benares at that time, and all the others were Mayavadis. It is the duty of a grihasta to sometimes invite sannyasis to take food at his home. This grihasta Brahmana wanted to invite all the sannyasis to his house, but he also knew that it would be very difficult to induce Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to accept such an invitation, because the Mayavadi sannyasis would be present. Therefore he fell down at the feet and fervently appealed to the Lord to be compassionate and grant his request. Thus he humbly submitted his desire. Text 55. Nayaha sannyasi goshti iha amijani mora angraha kari nimantrana mani. Translation. My dear Lord, I know that you never mix with other sannyasis, but please be merciful unto me and accept my invitation. An acharya, or great personality of the Vaishnava school, is very strict in his principles, but although he is as hard as a thunderbolt, sometimes he is as soft as a rose. Thus actually he is independent. This is the point. He's independent. Always Mahaprabhu is independent. He follows all the rules and regulations strictly, but sometimes he slackens this policy. It was known that Lord Chaitanya never mixed with the Mayavadi sannyasis, yet he conceded to the request of the Brahmana, as stated in the next verse. Text 56. Prabhu hashe nirmantrana koile angikara sannyasira kripa lagi e bangi tanhara. Translation. Lord Chaitanya smiled and accepted the invitation of the Brahmana. He made this gesture to show his mercy to the Mayavadi sannyasis. Purport. Tapana Mishra and Chandrasekhar appealed to the lotus feet of the Lord regarding their grief at the criticism of him by the sannyasis of Benares. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu merely smiled, yet he wanted to fulfill the desires of his devotees, and the opportunity came when the Brahmana came to request him to accept his invitation to be present in the midst of the other sannyasis. This coincidence was made possible by the omnipotence of the Lord. Yogamaya. Text 57.
Se viprajanena prabhu nayanena karigar tanhara preranya tanre anyagraha kare.
The Brahmana knew that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu never went to anyone else's house, yet due to inspiration from the Lord, he earnestly requested him for this invitation. Text 58.
Are dina gela prabhu se viprapavane dekelena vasichena sanyasira gane.
Translation. The next day, when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to the house of that Brahmana, he saw all the sannyasis of Benares sitting there. Text 59.
Sabha namaskari gela pada prakashlana kari visali sestane.
As soon as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw the sannyasis, he immediately offered obeisances and then went to wash his feet. After washing his feet, he sat down by a place where he had done so. Purport. By offering his obeisances to the Mayavadi sannyasis, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very clearly exhibited his humbleness to everyone. Vaishnavas must not be disrespectful to anyone, to say nothing of a sannyasi. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu teaches, amanina manadena. One should always be respectful to others, but should not demand respect for himself. A sannyasi should always walk barefoot, and therefore when he enters a temple or a society of devotees, he should first wash his feet and then sit down in a proper place. In India, it is still the prevalent custom that one put his shoes in a specified place and then enter the temple barefoot after washing his feet. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was an ideal acharya, and those who follow in his footsteps should practice the methods of devotional service that he teaches us. Even the small things, all aspects of Mahaprabhu's behavior, the devotee wants to embrace. Text 60.
Vishaya karile kichu aishvara prakasha mahat te jomaya vapu koti surya basya.
Translation. After sitting on the ground, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exhibited his mystic power by manifesting an effulgence as brilliant as the illumination of millions of suns. So this is a huge illumination. One sun is a big illumination. 100 suns is massive. 1,000 suns. But it's describing here of millions of suns. Not just million, but so we can imagine the extent of that aura that he manifested. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is full of all potencies. Therefore, it is not remarkable for him to manifest the illumination of millions of suns. Lord Sri Krishna is known as Yogeshwara, the master of all mystic powers. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Lord Krishna himself. Therefore, he can exhibit any mystic power. Generally, we find in Mahaprabhu's pastimes very, very limited Aishwarya manifestations like this to demonstrate to people that he is that Supreme Lord. But in this instance, there was no other way. These Mayavadis were so hardcore that Mahaprabhu had to come up against them in this way. Otherwise, how could he purify them? Text 61.
Prabhave arkashila sabha sanyasi raman utila sanyasi sabha chadiya asan.
When the sannyasis saw the brilliant illumination of the body of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, their minds were attracted, and they all immediately gave up their sitting places and stood in respect. Why were their minds attracted? Because they're all heading for the Brahman. That's their focus. They all want that Brahman effulgence. That's their goal. These Mayavadi sannyasis, that's what they wanted. So they see someone like this and they, he must have reached the Brahman. So therefore they were very attracted. Purport. To draw the attention of common men, sometimes saintly persons, acharyas and teachers exhibit extraordinary opulences. This is necessary to attract the attention of fools. But a saintly person should not misuse such power for personal sense gratification, like false saints who declare themselves to be gods. These demonstrations are for fools. They are for people who will be impressed by that Aishwarya exhibition. That is like a magician. They're impressed with those sorts of things. But the pure devotee, he's not impressed by these things. Even a magician can exhibit extraordinary feats that are not understandable to common men. But this does not mean that the magician is God. It is most sinful activity to attract attention by exhibiting mystic powers and then to utilize this opportunity to declare oneself to be God. A real saintly person never declares himself to be God, but always places himself in the position of a servant of God. Servant of God is so attractive. When one generally, like Ishwara Puripad, when he came into the assembly and went to Acharya's house, he was dressed just like an ordinary general person. No one even knew who he was. He was carrying the mood and bhav of Madhavendra Puri, greatest devotee, and yet no one could recognize who he was until Mukunda Datta, he said this beautiful verse, Maharapita Natavarava Karaneo Karanikaram. When Krishna is going into the forest wearing a Karanika flower on his ear, how beautiful he looks. So Advaita Mukunda Datta recited this verse thinking that he somehow looks something special. And then immediately Ishwara Puri goes into complete ecstatic trance that lasts for a long time. Perhaps 40, 50 minutes, he's rolling on the ground, completely drenched in his own tears, etc. So this revealed his real, true spiritual bhav and potency by this. Not that he walks into the assembly carrying a huge aura or something like that. Not ever looking for that sort of respect. So Prabhupada is saying, it is most sinful activity to attract attention by exhibiting mystical powers and then utilizing this opportunity to declare oneself to be God. A real saintly person never declares himself to be God, but always places himself in the position of a servant of God. For a servant of God, there is no need to exhibit mystic powers, and he does not like to do so. But on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, a humble servant of God performs his activities in such a wonderful way that no common man could dare try to act like him. Yet a saintly person never takes credit for such actions, because he knows very well that when wonderful things are done on his behalf by the grace of the Supreme Lord, all credit goes to the master and not the servant. So we see in the life of Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada himself, many devotees would comment when Prabhupada would come off the plane, he would look like a million suns. The devotees would see that blistering illumination of Prabhupada. He would demonstrate it because at that time it was needed to convince the lower caste of people of his Godhead, of his supreme potency, of being a pure devotee. That was necessary. But other personalities would never exhibit those exhibitions in that way. Unnecessary. It's a very subtle point. Text 62. Prakashananda name sarva sannyasi pradana Prabhu ke kahile kichu kariya samana. Translation. The leader of all the Mayavadi sannyasis present was named Parashakananda Prakashananda Saraswati. And after standing up, he addressed Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as follows with great respect. Purport. As Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed respect to all the Mayavadi sannyasis, similarly, the leader of the Mayavadi sannyasis, Prakashananda, also showed his respects to the Lord. Text 63. Ihan Aishe Sunha Shripada Apavritra Stane Vaishe Kiva Avasada. Translation. Please come here, Your Holiness. Why do you sit in that unclean place? What has caused your lamentation? Considering that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is lamenting, that's why he's sitting in such a disreputable place where you wash the feet. Here is the distinction between Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Prakashananda Saraswati. In the material world, everyone wants to introduce himself as very important and great, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu introduced himself very humbly and meekly. The Mayavadis were sitting in an exalted position, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sat in a place that was not even clean. Therefore, the Mayavadi sannyasis thought that he must have been aggrieved for some reason, and Prakashananda Saraswati inquired about the cause for his lamentation. Text 64. Prabhu kaye ame hoy hina sampradaya Toma sabara sabya visite na yuyaya. Translation. The Lord replied, I belong to a lower order of sannyasis, therefore I do not deserve to sit with you. Purport. Mayavadi sannyasis are always very puffed up because of their knowledge of Sanskrit and because they belong to the Sankara Sampradaya. They are always under the impression that unless one is a Brahmana and a very good Sanskrit scholar, especially in grammar, one cannot accept the renounced order of life or become a preacher. Mayavadi sannyasis always misinterpret all the Shastras with their word jugglery and grammatical compositions. Yet Sripad Sankaracharya himself condemned such jugglery of words in the verse Prapte Sanhite Kale Nahi Rakshite Dukrin Karane. Dukrin refers to suffixes and prefixes in Sanskrit grammar. Sankaracharya warned his disciples that if they concerned themselves only with the principles of grammar, not worshipping Govinda, they were fools who would never be saved. Yet in spite of Sripad Sankaracharya's instructions, foolish Mayavadi sannyasis are always busy juggling words on the basis of strict Sanskrit grammar. Mayavadi sannyasis are very puffed up if they hold the elevated sannyas title Tirtha, Ashram, Saraswati. Even among Mayavadis, those who belong to other sampradayas and hold other titles, such as Vana, Aranya, and Bharati, are considered to be lower grade sannyasis. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted sannyas from the Bharati Sampradaya, and thus he considered himself a lower sannyasi than Prakashananda Saraswati. To remain distinct from Vaishnava sannyasis, the sannyasis of the Mayavadi Sampradaya always think themselves to be situated in a very much elevated spiritual order. But Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in order to teach them how to become humble and meek, accepted himself as belonging to a lower sampradaya of sannyasis. Thus he wanted to point out clearly that a sannyasi is one who is advanced in spiritual knowledge. One who is advanced in spiritual knowledge should be accepted by occupying a better position than those who lack such knowledge. The Mayavadi Sampradaya sannyasis are generally known as Vedantis, as if Vedanta were their monopoly, as if they owned the Vedanta. They're thinking it's my monopoly. Actually, however, Vedanti refers to a person who perfectly knows Krishna, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 15:15. Vedaischa sarvai aham eva vedya. By all the Vedas, it is Krishna who is to be known. The so-called Mayavadi Vedantis, who do not know who Krishna is, therefore their title of Vedanti, or knower of Vedanta philosophy, is simply a pretension. Mayavadi sannyasis always think of themselves as real sannyasis and consider sannyasis of the Vaishnava order to be brahmacharis. A brahmachari is supposed to engage in the service of a sannyasi and accept him as his guru. Mayavadi sannyasis therefore declare themselves to be not only gurus but jagat gurus, or the spiritual masters of the entire world, although of course they cannot see the entire world. Sometimes they dress gorgeously and travel on the backs of elephants in processions, and thus they are always puffed up, accepting themselves as jagat gurus. Srila Rupa Goswami, however, has explained that jagat guru properly refers to one who is the controller of his tongue, mind, words, belly, and genitals. Vacho vegam, manasa krodha vegam, jiva vegam, udara pastra vegam, etan vegam, yovisha heta dira. Pritibim Shashishyati. Such a Jagat Guru is completely fit to make disciples all over the world. Due to false prestige, Mayavadi sannyasis who do not have these qualifications sometimes harass and blaspheme a Vaishnava sannyasi who humbly engages in the service of the Lord. The object and purpose of life is to engage in service of the Lord, is to wake up our natural propensity of love for the Lord. And this is demonstrated always through devotional service. What's that, Mam Chai? Is that only by devotional service? Bhaktyamam abhijananti yavan yaschasmi tatvataha. And that's the rest of that verse. Tatomam tatvato natva vishate tat anantaram. One can understand me as I am, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by devotional service. It doesn't say by Sanskrit grammatical word jugglery. And when one is in full consciousness of me, by such devotion, he can enter the kingdom of God. Text 65. Apmanane prakashananda hoite dariya vishale sabara madhye samana kariya. Prakashananda Saraswati, however, caught Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally by the hand and seated him with great respect in the midst of the assembly. So, on the cover of his book, you can see Mahaprabhu sitting in the assembly, and he's sitting where one washes his feet. And now, Prakashananda Saraswati, he's picking him out of that place to seat him in the midst of the assembly of the Vaishnavas, of the Mayavadi sannyasis. The respectful behavior of Prakashananda Saraswati towards Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very much to be appreciated. Such behavior is calculated to be agyata sukriti, or pious activities that one executes unknowingly. Prakashananda needed to do some sukriti. Mahaprabhu arranged for this inspiration to come to him, to take his hand and take him out of that place where he was sitting. He's getting this unknown pious activity, agyata sukriti. Gyata means knowing, agyata means not knowing. Sukriti, you perform some act and you don't even know you're doing it. Sometimes someone may just smile at a devotee. Someone may unknowingly give something to a devotee. That's their sukriti is going to be greatly increased by that activity. Even they don't know you're a devotee or anything, but if they serve you in some way, then it's greatly to their advantage. Thus, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very tactfully gave Prakashananda Saraswati an opportunity to advance in agyata sukriti, so that in the future he might actually become a Vaishnava sannyasi. Text 66.
Uchila Tamara Nama Shri Krishna Chaitanya Keshava Bharatir Shishya Tate Tumi Danaya.
Prakashananda then said, I understand that your name is Shri Krishna Chaitanya. You are a disciple of Shri Keshava Bharati, and therefore you are glorious. Text 67.
Sampradaika Sanyasi Tuma Raha E Grame Ki Karane Ama Sabara Nakare Darshane.
Translation. You belong to the Sankara Sampradaya and live in our village, Varanasi. Why then do you not associate with us? Why is it that you avoid even seeing us? Purport. A Vaishnava sannyasi or a Vaishnava in the second stage of advancement in spiritual life can understand four principles. Second stage is Madhyam, namely the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the devotees, the innocent, and the jealous. And he behaves differently with each. So this is from this verse that we mentioned before. This Prem, Maitri, Kripapeksha, and Baleshu means the demons he's avoiding. Baleshu, is the innocent. And Vastesu, to the envious. And Prem, love and affection. Maitri, friendship. So this verse explains the position of the Madhyam Adhikari. The innocent and the jealous. and he behaves differently with each. He tries to increase his love for God Godhead, make friendship with devotees, and preach Krishna consciousness among the innocent, but he avoids the jealous who are envious of the Krishna consciousness movement. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself exemplified such behavior, and this is why Prakashananda Saraswati inquired, "Why do you not associate or even talk with them?" Chaitanya Mahaprabhu confirmed by example that a teacher of the Krishna consciousness movement generally should not waste his time talking with Mayavadi sannyasis. But when there are arguments on the basis of Shastra, a Vaishnava must come forward to talk and defeat them in philosophy. According to Mayavadi sannyasis, only one who takes sannyas in the distinct succession of Sankaracharya is a Vedic sannyasi. Sometimes it is challenged that the sannyasis who are preaching in the Krishna consciousness movement are not genuine because they do not belong to Brahmin families. For Mayavadis do not offer sannyas to one who does not belong to a Brahmin family by birth. Unfortunately, however, they do not know that at present everyone is born a Sudra, Kalo Sudra Sambhava. All in this world are born Sudras. No one is actually a real Brahmana. All are lower quality. It is to be understood that there is no Brahmanas in this age because those who claim to be Brahmanas simply on the basis of birthright do not have the Brahminical qualifications. However, even if one is born in a non-Brahmin family, if he has the Brahminical qualifications, he should be accepted as a Brahmana, as confirmed by Srila Narada Muni, the great saint, and the great saint Sridhar Swami. This is also stated in Srimad Bhagavatam. Both Narad and Sridhar Swami completely agree that one cannot be a Brahman by birthright, but must possess the qualities of a Brahmana. Thus, in our Krishna consciousness movement, we never offer the sannyas order to a person whom we do not find to be qualified in terms of the prescribed Brahminical principles. Although it is a fact that unless one is a Brahmana, he cannot become a sannyasi, it is not a valid principle that an unqualified man who is born in a Brahmin family is a Brahmana, whereas a Brahminically qualified person born in a non-Brahmin family cannot be accepted. The Krishna consciousness movement strictly follows the injunctions of Srimad Bhagavatam, avoiding misleading heresy and manufactured conclusions. Therefore, to act in that capacity, to take that role, if one is qualified in Brahminical behavior, then he becomes qualified for that role. But if one is not familiar and understanding what are the necessary qualities of a Brahman, then he's actually disqualified for a sannyasi, whether he's Indian by birth or Western. One has to be conversant in what are the Brahminical precepts and qualities. Like the principle is Trinadapi Sudichena, Tarodapi Sudichena. This is the principal quality one must follow. Translation. Oh, sorry.
Sannyasi hoye kara naratana gaina, babuka sabha sange lana kari sankirtana.
You are a sannyasi. Why then do you indulge in chanting and dancing, engaging in your Sankirtan movement in the company of fanatics? Purport. This is a challenge by Prakashananda Saraswati to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes in his Anubhasya that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the object of Vedanta philosophical research, has very kindly determined who is an appropriate candidate for study of Vedanta philosophy. The first qualification of such a candidate is expressed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Shastikam, Chinadapi Sunichena Taroriva Suvichena Amanina Manadena Kirtanya Sadhari. That's what we just said. This statement indicates that one can hear or speak about Vedanta philosophy through the displic succession. This is what humility means. I'm repeating verbatim what my Gurudev has said. He is repeating verbatim what his Gurudev has said, all the way back to Srila Rupa Goswami. Rupa Goswami is repeating verbatim what Sachinandan Gaurahari has instructed him to do. It's a clear, transparent line. Clear as the crystal sun. That's our line. Therefore, no mistake can happen because it's so powerful, because it comes intact. Guru has to be the transparent medium for his Guru. So when we look at Guru, we understand, if I'm looking at Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, I'm also looking at Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj. I'm also looking at Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami. I'm also looking at Srila Gokishore Das Babaji. I'm also looking at Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur. A whole line like that. We see Guru is that transparent via medium, ultimately coming from Nityananda Rai. Because from Nityananda Rai, he's the Akhanda Guru Mula Tattva we've already discussed in the 5th chapter. This statement indicates that one can hear or speak about Vedanta philosophy through the displic succession. One must be very humble and meek, more tolerant than a tree and more humble than grass. One should not claim respect for himself, but should be prepared to give all respect to others. One must have these qualifications to be eligible to understand Vedic knowledge. Text 69.
Vedanta Partana Daina Sanyasira Dharma Tahachadikare Kena Bhavukera Karma.
Translation. Meditation and the study of Vedanta are the sole duties of a sannyasi. Why do you abandon these and dance with fanatics? This is what Prakashananda Saraswati is saying. Purport. As explained in regard to verse 41, Mayavadi sannyasis do not approve of chanting and dancing because it's so personal. Chanting and dancing is very personal. It means you're expressing your innermost feelings in service to the Lord by glorifying his holy name. You're recognizing initially that the Lord has so many names: Govinda, Radharaman, Krishna, etc., Gopal. These are all beautiful names of the Lord. If one is chanting these names of the Lord, then one is going to be filled with the ecstasies of those names. They're going to manifest in his heart, and therefore he's going to dance. It's a science, practically. When you're connecting with the Lord in glorification to the Lord, it will inspire us spontaneously to dance, like we described yesterday, that Sannyasi Thakur was looking at, that devotee was seeing him dancing in ecstasy and was realizing that the taste that this devotee is getting is so much higher than this Advaita Vad that I've been following. As explained in regard to verse 41, Mayavadi sannyasis do not approve of chanting and dancing. Prakashananda Saraswati, like Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, misunderstood Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to be a misled young sannyasi. Definitely, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya thought he was a very young sannyasi and needed instruction in Vedanta. So he describes all Vedanta to him. And therefore he asked him why he indulged in the association of fanatics instead of executing the duty of a sannyasi. We are fanatics. We have to be fanatics in the sense that we are one-pointed in our direction and focus. But we should not disturb the social order necessarily and appear like crazy men at unnecessary times. We also have to balance our progress according to time, place, and circumstance. Text 70.
Prabhaveda kiyatama sakshat narayan hinachare kare kena itheki karam.
Translation. You look as brilliant as if you were Narayan himself. Will you kindly explain the reason that you have adopted the behavior of lower class people? Purport. Due to renunciation, Vedanta study, meditation, and the strict regulative principles of their daily routine, Mayavadi sannyasis are certainly in a position to execute pious activities. Thus, Prakashananda Saraswati, on account of his piety, could understand that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was not an ordinary person, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Why were they able to recognize what is pious activities? Because they were not indulging in the hedonistic activities of this world. They weren't indulging in meat eating, in so much noise in the public area. They were spending their lives meditating and studying Sanskrit grammar. So this, in contrast to the gross materialist, is a great step up. So in that sense, they had that potency, that piety to give something. They had the power to actually give something. On account of his piety, could understand that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was not an ordinary person, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sakshat Narayan. He considered him to be Narayan himself. Mayavadi sannyasis address one another as Narayan because they think that they are going to be Narayan or merge with Narayan in the next life. They didn't think he was the Supreme Personality of Godhead separately. They thought he had just evolved in the Sankara philosophy to become merged in the Brahman and to become that Supreme Lord. So they were thinking he was Narayan from that perspective, not that he was Narayan full of qualities and so on. Not the beautiful Krishna. They were not thinking like that. Prakashananda Saraswati appreciated that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had already directly become Narayan. But he did not need to wait until his next life. This is how they think. This is their goal. One difference between the Vaishnavas and the Mayavadi philosophers is that Mayavadi philosophers think that after giving up their bodies, they are going to become Narayan by merging with his body. I mean, that's such a tragedy. That means you miss out on all of Krishna's amazing pastimes, the remarkable transmissions of rasa between Krishna and Radhika and all the Brijbasis. All of this variety is completely denied for the Mayavadis. It's the most tragic place of consciousness, what they miss. So by hearing these teachings, we can understand the destitute nature of these Mayavadis and how unfortunate they are. So Mahaprabhu himself is feeling great lamentation and wants to actually assist them into such a higher consideration of devotional service. Whereas Vaishnava philosophers, understanding that after the body dies, they are going to have a transcendental spiritual body in which to associate with Narayan, to perform their essential services to him. Text 71.
She's asking Maharaj, do they really want to go to Brahman, or they don't know the difference, or they are covered over?
They want to go to Brahman. They really want to merge into the Brahmajyoti. They don't really know, perhaps, what is the Brahmajyoti, but they want to go to that impersonal light. This is an impersonal line, and they're not sufficiently versed in the scripture to understand what is beyond the Brahman. They've only studied up to the Brahman, the same as the Devas. The Devas are also in a similar position, although they do accept. They're called Brahmavads. They will accept that there's a personal form, but they don't understand it. And they don't really, they think that by merging into the Brahman and becoming like Krishna, that this is the sum and substance and goal of life. And many think like this. Not even just the so-called Mayavadi schools. Many speculative philosophers think that by studying the scripture, they can actually come into that Brahmajyoti, that light. What are the qualities of the Brahmajyoti? It consists of Gyan and Vairagya, knowledge and renunciation. So if they live a very renounced life and they have some knowledge of the transcendental nature, they don't want, it's the service that they avoid. And it's the service that connects us with the spiritual, with the loving aspect. It's that service that is absolutely necessary. Service is the symptom of love, we've said so many times. So this service attitude is denied them. Who are they serving? They are only ever serving themselves. And that is their hardcore desire to merge into the Brahman. If they knew what the Brahman was, the bodily effulgence of Krishna, then they would want to serve that person from where the Brahmajyoti is manifesting from. But they don't. They simply accept that first proposition of the Brahmajyoti light, and they want to attain that. Text 71. Prabhu kage suna shripad ihara karan, guru more mukha deki korila sasan. Translation. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied to Prakashananda Saraswati, "My dear sir, kindly hear the reason. My spiritual master considered me a fool, and therefore he chastised me." Purport. When Prakashananda Saraswati inquired from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu why he neither studied Vedanta nor performed meditation, Lord Chaitanya presented himself as a number one fool in order to indicate that the present age, Kali Yuga, is an age of fools and rascals in which it is not possible to attain perfection simply by reading Vedanta philosophy and meditating. So even if you try to meditate, you can't meditate in this age. It's practically impossible. There are so many disturbances. From the atmosphere itself, it's so polluted with so much cow slaughter, with so many radio waves are coming through. But today they're not coming on our live stream, but so much sinful activity is being performed, which creates a very polluting atmosphere and ultimately causes diseases, and the sound vibrations that are necessary to hear while we're chanting becomes minimized and obstructed by all the pollutants in the atmosphere. And we have to navigate through this. But the Hare Krishna mantra itself, if we chant it loudly, then it'll offset all the disturbances that afflict the mind. When we're chanting, we should very loudly be chanting. The Shastras strongly recommend Harinam, Harinam, Harinameva Kevalam, Kalo Nasteva, 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 Eva, Gatia, Anyata. In this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. There is no other way. 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 It's only just the chanting of the holy names, but chanting of the holy names with the intentions to serve Krishna, not with the intention to reach the Brahman. Sometimes people, they chant still with the intention to reach the Brahman, because the material world is so much suffering and affliction, and the variety of the material world is something that they want to oppose, and they want to just go into a meditative, reclusive type of mentality, and they consider that just by chanting that chanting can lead you to that place. Chanting can give anything you desire. Whatever is your heart's desire, the Mahamantra will fulfill. That's why we have to set our compass very clearly on what is our desire. Very, very clearly. 5 times a day we have to assess our intention. Where are we going here? What are we trying to inspire? Our attraction exclusively to the service of Radha and Krishna. And that means his holy land, Vrindavan Dham, which is where Krishna resides. People in general in Kali Yuga are so fallen that it is not possible for them to obtain perfection simply by studying the Vedanta Sutra. One should therefore seriously take to the constant chanting the holy name of the Lord. So we'll stop here today. But yes, this is the only conclusion, is to chant Hare Krishna. There isn't anything else. This is a very ecstatic part of the Caitanya Caritamrta, and we're just reaching the very climax now, where Mahaprabhu is going to instruct these Mayavadi sannyasis, and he's going to change their hearts, and they're all going to join him in Harinam Sankirtan in Varanasi. It's a most wonderful, wonderful example of Mahaprabhu's powerful, powerful preaching. And we also have to try to encourage others to do the same thing. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Caitanya Caritamrta ki jai, Ananta Gauta Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gaura Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gaura Hari Bol, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Vanshakapa Tarubhyascha, Kripasindhubhyacha, Patitaram Pavibhyo, Vaishnavibhyo, Namo Maha.